Son of a gun. It's taken me 2 days to get here because it's a slow process, and the part that is the slowest is peeling off all of the plastic. Now, the first day it did take me some time to get number one figured out, to kind of do the layout. What I've realized is I did this completely backwards. There was no instructions in kind of the blueprints that came with this. It shows you how to put that on, but it doesn't show you when to put that on. And realistically, all of this trim out should have been on before we sheeted the building, and that would have made it so much better. But we would have been running into a problem. We would have still been short. We would have still had too high of a header, but our pieces would have been at the same spot. We would have just had to build that up differently, but that's okay. We're gonna cover up that last little bit with some trim out, and that'll be just fine. But what we've learned is, if you're doing a shop, I would definitely do the trim on the doors before you do the siding. It will make it a little difficult to work around, but it does make it, I think, easier to get parts into. All of this remnant you're seeing is just a fraction of it. All of the trim on your shop comes with a plastic coating on it. Every one of these black pieces, other than the black roof itself, came with some kind of a coating on it that you've had to pry off. And some of those coatings have sat for almost a year and a half now. And some of it sat in the sun a little bit, sat in the cold, and it's made that plastic brittle, and it has just gnawed my fingers to pieces trying to get it off. I did learn that if you steam it, my wife wasn't happy about the steamer coming out, but if you steam it, it does come off a little bit, but then your fingers get hot and toasty and almost burnt a little bit. So I recommend, if you get your building and you're not going to be putting it up anytime soon, get that material covered and put away so that it's not getting any sun rot, any cold rot, anything like that. Get it kind of in a safer, somewhat covered area. That will help in the long run. The first thing I want to do on this trim out is do the covers. They're big 8-inch square pieces, 8-inch by 3.5-inch pieces that go up and around and down again. And they're kind of the easiest to get taken care of. One thing that's nice is, because of the way we did these wood sides, there's a little lip at the top, which is right where I need the corner to be. So I can actually set my tape measure on that and come down to the ground. And I'm coming to whatever the measurement is, minus 1/8 of an inch. So we're at 169 even. So we're gonna go 168 and 7/8. And I recommend writing it down, because you will forget. And that way I can do all my measurements, well, at least these two measurements real quick. Okay, since both of ours are the same dimension, this will be really easy. I'm gonna make a mark at 168 and 7/8 right here. But then I'm gonna add 3.5 inches, because these legs right here are 3.5 inches, and you'll see why in a minute. So 1, 2, 3, and then a half. So 172 and 3/8. Those are our two markers. 168 and 7/8 and 172 and 3/8. I'll be honest, I stewed on how to connect these for days, and it just did not come to my brain. And I kept searching online to find a good guide for it, and there just wasn't anything. And it was maybe just my word search, the usage that I was giving was weird, but I did come across a YouTuber that I've been watching for a long time, R&R Building. This is what he does, is he builds these buildings for a living. And so he actually has a layout for this, and I found it. So this is the exact same layout he uses, and it's the one I'm going to use because it makes the most sense. So we're going to make two lines with our dimension that we gave. That is going to be the top of this, but then we're going to go 3.5 inches higher, cut another line, and then with that higher dimension, we're going to make some down lines. and you'll see why. Okay, so with my cutters, be very careful here not to make, this is my 168 and 7/8, the height of what I need it to be. This is the 3.5 inches past. This is the one I want to be cutting on. I've really tried hard to not make lines where I don't need them so that I don't accidentally cut something. Oh, come on. On this one, I've kind of learned after doing a few of these how to make that cut without making weird notch marks in it. But that took a minute to learn, and practice gets you there, I think. And even then, I'm still a rookie at this. But if you're wanting to know how to cut these the simplest so you're not struggling, let me show you a trick here. Depending on what kind of cutters you have, there are right-handed, left-handed, and when you buy your cutters, it'll actually have an arrow that'll show if it goes straight or to the right or to the left or both, depending on which you've got. I've got these long spanned ones, which I'm really disappointed with these Milwaukee ones. I feel like they're not as well built as my Weiss ones or whatever. This brand I feel like is a little better, so I'll link these guys down in the description. But depending on which direction they cut, you'll learn that this is your bottom blade, obviously, because it's on the bottom, and this is your top blade, but you'll learn that this blade will always be below, and this one will be on top, and so you need to make sure that when you cut, your metal pieces aren't lapping over this. You want them to lap over this side. Let me show you. So we make this first cut, which seems like no problem. But now we need this to go this way, and this may flex it, but if you're not comfortable flexing it, just make a simple little notch into your scrap. And the best of the best, I swear this is what they do. They just notch it a little bit, cut off that notch because they don't need it. Now I can get back to my original line, putting my pliers where they're supposed to go, and I've got room for this side of the scissors to go through. There we go. So yeah, that piece doesn't look as clean as the other one, but my cuts do on the piece that I'm gonna actually put up on the building, and that's the one that really matters. But it's kind of nice to have a nice clean piece, because then I can use that scrap for something else down the way. Now we're gonna make a cut into here and notch this and bend it and keep our tabs upright. So now I can put this blade, because it'll go underneath, and this one will sit on top, and I'm gonna come right along that bind, like right at that corner, down to our little 3.5 inch line. And then I need to switch my pliers, because these ones cut one direction, the other ones cut the other direction. Case in point, I can put the scissor underneath and get right on this line like I want to. This one can sit above. This one can't do that. No matter how I do it, it can't do it. So this is a one direction, this is another direction. And because these ones are straight, they're actually supposed to be both directions, but regardless of which way they will cut, depends on how they sit into your metal. Okay, now I can show you one more time with this. I'm gonna grab my square, set it so that it's on that cut line, and now I can bend this piece like a 90 against it. And there are pliers that are meant to do that, but I'm not going to go buy a pair of pliers for 6 bends when I'm not going to be doing this a ton. by hand is great. And all we're trying to do is create a spot so that we've got this nice trim look underneath the top part. So that way we don't have a joint coming together with like a butt joint. We have this overlapping. You'll see, and it makes the world of difference. Here is the worst part. Of the entire process. Ah, one down. What a pain. Look at that pink cotton candy sunset. Oh my golly. It's beautiful. Oh, it's gonna turn cold real fast. So you do have to watch those top tabs and get those to slide over top. Now that those two are staying in place and not going to fall, I'm going to go up and I'm just securing them with some small screws. There we go. Now. And the thing that we're really trying to be careful of is to get this to go behind all of this sheeting and insulation and everything. We need that to tuck right behind there. So you may have to loosen some of these previously secured screws, and it'll help you out just a little bit. Don't fight it. And you could put screws really often in here, but really all I'm doing is putting them the same as the panels are on the outside. Wherever there's a purlin, there's a screw. And I feel like that's more than enough on a lot of these. Man, it just feels so twisted a little bit. I don't know. This is our very last piece of channel that was sent. I do this one just a little bit different. I really want to have this little square right here overlap the other piece and then make my cut in from here. So in order to make our dimension of 164 1/4, I have to start from 3.5 inches in here. So I like to just make that cut and then make my measurement, but I'm gonna do it from that end. With our notch taken out of that end, I can make my actual length measurement inside the notch. 164, 4 1/4. That looks good. So I got my measurement length, which was 164 1/4 to this line, but then I'm going to add 3.5 inches so that I create this little square tab here. Since we're cutting these out, I'm going to show you a little trick that makes it easier. If you know this is all going to be scrap, this is kind of how I like to cut it in. Pretty much the same way you would do it with like a scroll saw, is start at one side and work to your line, and then at your line turn in, or gradually turn into your like actual line you need. Then come back, because once again we can put this blade underneath now because we have room. Worst part of the whole process again is peeling this stupid plastic back. The next stop, or the next spot, is that top kind of drip cap. We want to prevent water from coming down over top of the door, and we want to divert it to the sides to drop down these panels, which that one does. And in order to do that, you go the width of the door plus 3 inches minimum on each side. So I go 167¼ plus 6 inches, which is 173¼ Since our measurement is 173¼ we just go from one end because we have to feed this in and kind of shove it into that corner. One of the things I like to do is get rid of this point because it's just going to make it harder. It's just going to make it something to grab onto, whether it's insulation or whatnot. So I just lightly round that corner. And that helps it to go in a lot better. Another thing to keep in mind is that on any of these bends where there's a lip like that, when you cut through them, you kind of pinch them. So if they need to be opened back up, open it up. But this one looks pretty good. It's going to feel so good to get this workstation all the way picked up for the last time. One of the things we do have to do is go through and undo all of these screws along here. I'm going to come into this a little bit too so that I'm not fighting those screws. We're going to put them all back, but we need our drip edge or our drip cap or whatever that is. This top header right here, we need it to slide underneath there, so we've got to pull every one of those. Yeah, I'm going to pull that guy. And I would say pull more than you think because you're going to fight them if you don't. Here's the very not fun part. This is the part I hate the least, or I hate the most, I guess, because you have to fit this piece up underneath all of these, which that's not hard, but then it's got to line up, and there are seams for where these overlap, and sometimes those fight. I'm yet to have one of these go in really smooth. And this one will be better. Okay, so far so good. You'll need some sort of a pry bar to kind of get up underneath and make sure that guy gets up where it's supposed to be. And you have to work it down a little bit because you got to put this in and make sure that back is sitting square. You don't want to be prying it up and have it tip in and have the back sit down and whatnot. You need it to really get up in there and get secure. Son of a gun. I don't recommend just doing all of them at once. I do recommend coming down, getting down here a little bit and making sure that's lifted in, because if you start screwing those in and this has got a small tilt to it, it's going to fix that. Or when you go to pry this piece up, you're going to get a bend somewhere. So come down here and work your way down further. There are two last little pieces that go on, and they're the simplest to put on. So I enjoy those. And once you've got everything else done, they should go on pretty simply. And it'll help kind of square out some of these too. These sit a little bit funky. The measurement is really easy to get. You put it right on top of that drip cap that we just put up, and come right to the bottom of this drip edge, 168 and an 8 3/8. And we just go and cut those out of the same trim. Now that I have both of these pieces set, I'm going to put a screw in at the bottom so it stays and so I can work off of that. Here's the last screw on this one, and that other side is done up as well. And I had to revert to pre-drilling these. All of these screws are actually a self-tapping screw, but sometimes when you've got multiple layers of this tin, it'll punch through that and then pull the tin away from the actual like frame metal you're trying to drill through, and it just fights it. Things get out of place. So I took some time on a few of these that were just struggling to get in, and I pre-drilled them, and it makes it so much easier. So when in doubt, just pre-drill. There we go. That's all of the trim on these doors, and that feels great to have that buttoned up and done. One of the last pieces that we do have to take care of is this gap between that drip cap. That typically would sit down here, but because we had to put that header in, we've got this exposed area. So I am gonna kind of think through what we can do to shove up under here and under there, and then let it just overlap this a little bit so it looks nice. But I'm looking for the right kind of piece that just looks good. They do make just a flat stock black that'll match this, but that'll be really wavy, and it's called oil canning. We don't really want that look. You already see it enough in this as is. So I'd like something with somewhat of a ridge or even a kind of a lip on it so that it just puts that rigidity in it, and then it takes the oil canning right out.